Okay, this is a kind of journaling video, just an interim video on Daniel 9:24. It says 9:24 and 25, but I really now parsed Daniel 9:24 through 27, and I'm in a complete state of shock over it, because this is God's use of meter. You know, I've talked about meter to so much of an extent and probably confused everybody, or at least their eyes are glazing over from it. And I did talk about the fact that Daniel 9:24 and 25 was metered. I thought that Daniel 9:26 wasn't metered. I'm wrong. Same thing for Daniel 9:27. It's also metered, which we're going to see. But I didn't do any videos on that. So I'm doing one now, and it's kind of out of place. You know, I'm still in the middle of posting the 11 GGS videos. But this is so important, I just have to talk about it now. Turn it off if you don't want to watch. You see in front of you two windows. The top window is Microsoft Word, and you will be able to download this. It'll be in the video description. And in the bottom window you see BibleWorks, and my purpose in showing it to you now is to show that I've pasted it. There's no alteration of the text. In the past, what scholars have done when they've tried to determine Hebrew meter, some of them altered the text or altered the pronunciation or something else in order to make their meter fit. I didn't do that. I don't even know what the meter is until I count the syllables, and then I see the pattern. And that's the result you see in the top window before you in the screen. I'm only going to call attention to the meter here. Okay, that's why I'm not showing the translation. Besides, your translations, for the most part, in some places it's off, but for the most part it's okay. So we're just going to look at the meter here. What's so shocking about it is the way it's constructed. Okay? It's got the same basic construct as Moses used in Psalm 90, and Daniel uses in his prayer, and Isaiah uses in Isaiah 53. And in fact, it's very directly talking back to those passages, which I'm going to briefly explain. But I want to focus here instead on just the internal construct of the meter itself. Okay? Because I just have to. You know, I'm sorry. I've been in a shock about this ever since Christmas. Okay, so you can see in the lower left-hand corner that I'm using the BHS text. So if you don't have BibleWorks, but you do have the BHS text, you can follow along. Okay, so now I'm going to move the mouse so the lower window is going to change. And I'm going to focus instead on the top window. Oh, please, mouse, don't be so slow again. Oh. I'm sorry, I've got too much loaded, I think, for the recording program. Okay, I want you to just look at the meter now. This is 7 syllables, covered up by black, so I'm going to have to sort of do it some other way. This is 4 syllables. This is 7 syllables. Notice how this phrase here, Alameka, is the people. They are, as it were, sheltered on either side by a 7 and a 7. Now this 7 relates to the city and the Holy of Holies, you know, the temple. And this is talking about how many weeks are decreed. Okay? And, you know, the 70 weeks, blah, blah. Okay. But notice how it's a 7 and then a 4, the people in the middle. It doesn't break another way. Alright, and then you got a 7 here. Statement of protection for Israel. You get that? Is this a killer or what? And then this is about this, you know, the sealing up, the finishing off, the answering to rebellion. This word hapesha here, usually translated transgression or something like that. It means rebellion. Okay, pesha means to rebel. All right. And then you have actually 3 series of 6s following. That's to seal up the rebellion. And then there's a care and a kathib reading, which we're going to get into. So only 2 of these words are actually in the Bible, and that's a 6 also. So whichever of the 2 words you select, whether you're selecting, let me see. We're going down here to the bottom window now. This is a kathiv, okay, and then this is a care. So the idea is that the care reading is putting its own 2 words in there versus the kathiv, which is its own 2 words. I think it's a mix based on the words that are used in the passage. I don't think either one of these is wholly correct. I think what you're looking at here, this word here, which is the care, I can't talk too well, I just finished eating. Lachatem, I don't think that's right. All right, it sounds like it would be because it's hifil infinitive, but he doesn't use that. He uses lachatom, which is the right here, the kathiv reading. This is the care right here. Okay, this is the care. I don't think that's right. This is the kathiv, lachatom. Okay, he uses lachatom up here. Where is it? Right here again. He uses it again up here, lachatom. And the way the wording goes, it would be repetitive. He's using legal words, so he's going to repeat them. So I think of these 2 readings, we're going to want to go with the kathiv here, lachatom. And then the second word that's right ends up being in the care, which is hatat, because it's singular. You see in the lower left-hand corner, feminine singular. And the reason I say that is because he uses lachatom right there with hazon right here. Okay, sealing up the vision. It's singular. And sin in the singular means all sin. Okay? Not sins plural, which is what the whatchamacallit, the kathiv is using hataot. Okay, I don't think that's right. I think it's singular. But in either event, it's still 6 syllables, okay? You got that? So you could have, argue differently, and I want to hear your arguments against it because I'm just talking off the top of my head here. But that's the sort of decision I've got so far, and that's the reasoning based on it. You got better reasoning, I want to hear it. If you got any reasoning, I want to hear it. Okay, so in any event, you got a 6, going back to the meter now because that's my purpose. You got a 6 here, and then whether, like I'm saying, it's a mix of one that's the kathiv and the other is the care. That's 6 syllables either way. Okay, in any combination, you got 6 syllables. All right, so we got a second 6 there, and then we got a third 6 here, and this is to cover, okay, awon. Awon means a twisting sin. Awon is like twisting scripture. You got a verse or you got an argument, and in order to justify your position, you're going to twist what that argument is to support what you want it to be. Okay? That's what awon is. Unfortunately, in English Bibles, and I can sort of understand why they do this, they tend to translate all these words the same way, so you don't see the difference. This, hapesha, is rebellion. Okay? Hatat, that's hataot, the plural. Here's the singular, which is, I think, what they really mean. That means sin, any kind. That's generic. That term is generic. Hatat. Okay? It's hata is the actual vocabulary form. All right? That's generic. But this is not generic. Awon is not generic. It means a sin that you sin by twisting. This is hapesha. This is a sin that you sin by rebelling. In other words, you know it's right. You're not pretending that it means something other than what it means. You just don't want it and you rebel against it. It's really important to make those distinctions so we know better what sin is. But, they don't do that in the translations, and that's really kind of pathetic. But at the same time, translation committees are all full of politics. What are you going to do? All right? But anyway, notice this. We got 3 6s here. All right? There's a 6, and there's a 6. You see that? All right? That argues a lot of things about the 666 in Revelation 13. All right? Yeah, they do mean it as a number, but you can spell 19,000 different names with 666. So, it doesn't necessarily mean Nero, and of course Nero was already dead then. And then you've got this, all right? in order to bring to an end, or bring into completion, really, righteousness forever. All right? Notice that's a 9. Trinity. You see that? And that's not the only 9. It's got, see, you have 3 6s right here. That's the first one. And here are the other 2. And then you got 3 9s. There's a 9. And then this next phrase, which I can't show rightly in the mouse, is the second 9. And here's the third 9. 3 9s following 3 6s. You get that? This meaning is like really significant. And it also, it helps you, because he's parsing it that way, it helps you understand the distinctions being made. You know, because a lot of people have made all kinds of comments about this passage in English, about what it means. And they don't know how it's being parsed in the meter, so they make mistakes in what they say it means. And it really matters, because see this word here, are decreed. Decreed by who? By God. God's doing the decreeing here. Gabriel is speaking for God. Okay? 70 weeks. Here, you know, here's weeks. Okay, yeah. Shibim, Shabuim, yeah, weeks. Shibim, 70. Are decreed. Decreed by who? God. So then Daniel 9:25 doesn't have anything whatsoever to do with the human king. You got that? I mean, it's real obvious from the Hebrew that the only one talking, the only one doing any decreeing is God. So what is it with the dispies that they all come up with a human king? I tell you, that tied me up in knots. For months I was trying to find, how do you date it to a human king? You know, I went with all the conventional scholarship and garbage like that for a long time. And then it's like, hello, who's doing the decreeing here in Daniel 9:24? Because I'd gone to God and I said, I can't make this balance. Yeah, because it's not a human king doing the decreeing. It's God. See? Know and understand. Well, that's Daniel. He's a man, so it's a 6. It divides. From the going forth of the decree to rebuild. Whose decree? The guy who's speaking right here. God. From the going forth of the decree to rebuild. Now, that's a 7. So that's obviously God. It's not a 6. We had our 6 right here. So if it was a human king's decree, this wouldn't be a 7. You'll notice it's split off by the wa here. So obviously I break it here at 7. So it's a 7. That means God's doing it. See how helpful the meter is for interpretation? Do you know how many scholars have torn themselves up in knots trying to balance Daniel 9 and they can't? Because there is no such thing as a decree to rebuild Jerusalem. It's not there. You can't find it. You know, a lot of people say, well, it's in Nehemiah. No, it's not. First of all, Nehemiah goes there in 52 days and does it. And all he's doing is rebuilding the wall. He's not rebuilding the city. The city had to be built in order to support the temple. So the city was already rebuilt before Nehemiah was born. Okay? So then what does this mean, to rebuild? Well, who's the decreer? God. Right here. See, 7 syllables. And when did he do that decree? Back in Jeremiah 25 and 29. Hi, you're going to have 70 years. So then when do you start the countdown? You're starting it from the time the temple goes down, 586. Okay, and that was the time for the temple to be rebuilt. Oh, but this is another 70 to rebuild Jerusalem. See, here's Jerusalem right here. Here's the decree to rebuild. And of course you could say, well, that's really the, you know, syntactically you could argue this is all one phrase. Okay, fine, it's 14 though. So God did it. God's the decreer here. Real obvious from the meter. And then this is a separate period until Messiah, the prince. Okay. And then these are weeks, Shabuim, Shiba, 7, 49 years. And Daniel's praying in the 49th year. That's why this is so pregnant. And Daniel modeled 2 of his verses at 49 syllables. That's why this is so pregnant. You can only know that if you know the meter. Why is it 49 in the English? Nobody knows. But if you know the meter, you know why. Because Daniel's praying in the 49th year because there were only 49 missed sabbatical years, not 70. Eusebius thought there were 70, and nobody's questioned him ever since. Okay, but Daniel tells you it's only 49. So God's replying, hi, 49. There's going to be a 49 reimbursement of the 49 years that you just spent. Because he's praying really at the beginning of the 49th year. Okay? And then after that, see, here's the wa. After that, there are going to be weeks, shabuim, shishim, pardon me for my American accent, okay, 60, Wishanaim, and 2, Teshuv, to the return. Who's that? Of God to Israel. Okay, in other words, his first coming. Because that's what Moses had asked for. You know, Shuhu Yahweh Matai in Psalm 90:13. Okay, and then here it's a 9, because why? It'll be rebuilt in open space, of course, you know, because it's all desolated, with a moat. Okay, this phrase here, harutz, that's how it's translated as moat, and that bothers me, but I don't have anything I can argue against it yet. It's just something's wrong with that, but I don't know why. So it could just be me that's wrong. It won't be the first time. Okay, but that's the way it's translated, and I don't have anything to go against it. It's just that it's such a strange way to translate the word. But maybe that's it. There you go. It'll be rebuilt again, broad expanse with a broad moat. You know, you notice how this is double entendre. It'll be built in a broad place. Yeah, because the whole city was, you know, desolate. But the moat itself might be broad and would have to be for good defense. Rehov usually has a good meaning, nice meaning, happy meaning. You know, wide open spaces. You know, they can be wide open if they're desolate. And it could imply that the moat itself is wide for good defense. Alright, and then it says, in distress, ba, see, u is saying that this is something separate now. Ba is the preposition, and tuk, distress. The k, you have to say with a little click sound in the upper back of your throat. Okay, and at the roof of your mouth. But tuk, like a click sound. I don't do it right. And then haitim, the times. So these are just in distress times. So as you can see, your translation is pretty decent. But I want you to notice, okay, I showed you the 2 sevens on either side of the people here. The number for sin is man, is the 6s, and we got 3 6s. Then after that, we got 3 9s. Here's the first one. You have to just presume that this is part of the second one that ends right here. And then here's the third one. See how measured this is? I almost fell over when I finally got it. I've been working on this for 2 days. All right? And then know and understand. Daniel's a man. He's a sinner just like anybody else. And he's telling, you know, it's a command to understand, which of course he already does. Then from the time that the decree goes forth, it's a 7, hello, God's doing the decree, not somebody, not a human king. And then in case you had any doubt, here's a second 7. And really, syntactically, this whole thing fits together as a 14. And then here's until Messiah, the prince. Then you got the 7 weeks, and then you got the 62 weeks, and the sum of that is 21. Okay, stressing Trinity and stressing his humanity being perfect. And then this is the city being built with a moat. And that's a 9, which means that Trinity will be behind it, will make it happen. And in troubled times. Well, God is not the author of troubled times. Man is. So it's a 6. You see how the meter fits the doctrine. is this cool or what? And the next increment, I'll deal with Daniel 9:26 and 27, which is even more shocking. Okay, now we're back at Daniel 9:26, and you're going to notice a really big change in the meter now. See all those 14s in the upper window? Right here? Okay, you got a 14 here. Then it's a 9, and this is about Mashiach going down, being killed for our sins. And he is backed and fronted by a 14. God, man, you get that doubling of the 7. That was introduced, actually, back here in Daniel 9:25. You see, you got 2 7s here. And then you got a Mashiach. Okay? And then hit the clause that's for him starts here and ends here as a 21. In other words, all the Trinity is involved. Is this clever or what? So, including him, it's a 21. All right, you can't break it syntactically. You have to keep going. Okay, I mean, you could say Ad Mashiach Nagid, and you could stop there, but that's only 6 syllables. Of course, that would mean he's man. Duh. Isn't this cute? But you really can't stop it there because it's like, that's just a noun phrase. All right, all by itself. So then this is the timeline, which we already went through. And then here's the verb finally, teshuv. That's when he comes. So you got 14 in back of him, God, man, promise, and then 21 including him. All right. So from that point onward, the 14s are used. See, here he is again, Mashiach, in the 9, again, stressing Trinity. Isaiah did the same thing in Isaiah 53. Just blew me away. And in front of him, this is, after the 62 weeks. Okay, it's not really weeks, it's heptads, 7s. This word here, shishim, I'm sorry. This is Shabua. Shabua means 7s. Okay. Shabuim, because it's plural. Sorry, Shabua is singular. Okay, so after the 62 7s, after. It doesn't say how long after. This is really important. After. Vachari. Vachare. After. Doesn't say how long after. In other words, at some point after this is started. Okay, started, not ended. Started. Paul's going to be using that as the basis for his prayer. Okay? Then he's cut off. In other words, sometime after the 62nd week began, Messiah is cut off and seems to have nothing. This word here is really cute. It's Wayne. This is with my American accent. It means like for nothing, like nothing comes out of it. Okay, and to him, lo. Okay. It doesn't seem like he accomplishes anything. And your translations pretty much reflect that. Okay, he's cut off. This is also the word that's used for cutting a covenant. It's also the word that's, it's related to the word that's used for circumcision, molel. Karat. This word here is karat. Okay? Yikarat is nifel. I think it's nifel. Let me go look down here. Yikarat, where did I put it? Where did I put it? This, okay. Karat. Where is it? Ah, here we go. Sorry. Okay? There you go. Nifel. Nifel imperfect. Okay, imperfect is used for future or progressive. Okay, it's anything that's not completed or viewed as completed. So he's cut off, or cuts a covenant, duh. And that's what the book of Hebrews is about. Alright? And it seems to accomplish nothing at that time. That's a 9, fronted by a 14. Okay? And what follows is a 14. This, plus all this, which is talking about the destruction of upcoming destruction of the people, okay, of the city, is 14 syllables, which means God ordered it. Yeah, he ordered it because that's what 1 Kings 9 contract says. That's also what this decree says, because this is still God's decree. Okay? So here's a 14. Fronting and backing Messiah. Alright? And it's also fronting and backing this. This really killed me when I saw it. Ukitzo, in the end. B'shetef, in a flood of troops. Okay? And then here's another 14. About how, from that time forward until he returns, you got, this is Ad, Ketz, until the end, war is decreed, and shames, plural, literally, that's what that means. They call it desolations, and that's fine too. Shame is what you feel as a result of being desolated. Meaning that Jerusalem is always going to be in trouble after that. Jerusalem will not be, how do you want to call it? Will not be in its own. And the fact that Israel is back there in the land today is not prophetic. The way people use Ezekiel 37, 38, they're wrong about that. That's just a political entity. This is talking about God restoring Israel, and that only happens at the second advent, which is Ezekiel 39. Right now, you fight for Israel to the death. All of us who are Christians should be the most staunch defenders of Israel and be willing to die for her at any second. At the same time, the return to the land is not right. But it's not her fault. She was pushed there by the pogroms as a result of World War II. All right? So at least she has a place to stay. And we should defend her with our lives, wherever she is, whether she's in Israel or outside Israel. But God has not returned her to the land. That's what this is telling you. And he won't until the second advent, Ezekiel 39. So you see, on the one hand, the end is there. It's God's will that the end be there. See? End with a flood of troops. And she's surrounded even now. Okay? And until the end, that's how it's going to stay. Wars and rumors of wars until I come. But you'll notice it's a 14 on either side. On either side of her, here's the flooding. You'll notice that's a 5, which means it's to the prophet of the world that this occur, and to her, of course. She's still protected by not just the 7. Remember back up here? We had a 7. See, here's the people in the middle, protected by God, 7, single, 7, on either side. Okay, but down here, because he's paid now, he's gone. See, yakaret. All right, so now he is the one defending her. Okay, so, Israel as a nation proper, or most of the people, you can't really say how many, have rejected Christ as Messiah, but he didn't reject them. And he's now seated, and it's a 14, no longer a 7, even though they're flooded. Is this cool or what? See how much more meaning to the text you get from the meter? I said somewhere in my other videos, and I'm dead wrong, obviously, from this, that Daniel 9, 26 and 7 wasn't metered. Wrong-o. See, it's more metered. It's metered with 14s. Why? Because he's already come. The minute he comes, it switches to 14. Again, we go back here. Okay? Here we got Ad Mashiach. Alright? We got 2 7s in front. That's a 14. And syntactically, really ought to treat him as a 14. I just broke him into 2 7s. Okay, here he is, and he's part of a 21. All the Trinity's involved. And from that point onward, syntactically, you got to go, see, because these are numbers. You can't break up the numbers into a separate clause. That's all one idea. So it's a 14. Too bad you can't see it because they used black there. Okay? And then he's already on earth at that point, see, so that's why it's 14. He's God-man now. He gets cut off. That's 9. And then there's a 14 on either side as a result of him getting cut off. The city is flooded and the people are flooded, but now they're protected by him. 14 on either side of the 5. Even though, war is decreed and desolation's shame to Israel. Yeah, but he's still protecting them just the same. In other words, the wars and desolation are designed to wake them up to smell the coffee. Yes, he came. And he's a 14 now. Got that? So are you surprised to see that Daniel 9:27 is also 4 14s? See, 5 14s. Here's 1. Here's a 14. Here's another 14. That's 2. Here's another 14. That's 3. And then 5 plus 9 is 14. So you got 4 14s. That adds up to 56, which I haven't discussed enough yet, but I will. All right? And then these are just solid 14s. In other words, all this is happening under the aegis, protection, and design of the very God-man who paid for sins the first time. 4 14s in Daniel 9:27. That adds up to 56. So we got a 56 here. I'll cover Daniel 9:27 in the next increment. We got a 56 here in Daniel 9:25. We got a 56 here in Daniel 9:26, and another 56 here in Daniel 9:27. And in the next increment, I'll start talking about the 56s after I cover Daniel 9:27. Okay, now we're getting into Daniel 9:27, and I had to change something because I caught a mistake I made. In Daniel 9:27, unlike the other two, Daniel 9:27 doesn't equal 56 now. I had overcounted syllables in this clause right here. In the last video you saw, it was 14 syllables. It's not. Okay? If I say yish be yeet, which is kind of stretching it, I'm not sure that that's justifiable, then this right here ends up being 11 syllables. But this is only 2. You can't get ziva to be 3 syllables. Okay? And I cut it here, even though this little marker is basically telling you that it's a stop in the, it's like a colon mark. Okay, the writer of the verse, this part here is not scripture, he's just making a notation. Okay, he might be copying it from somebody else who copied it, but the point is that Zeva, which are the daily lamb sacrifices, and Uminacha, which are the food offerings that the people brought. He's basically saying that there is a cessation of offering, and the text is really dual entendre. It's saying that the sacrifices that should have gone this way for the temple are instead going this way toward, that's wa'al, up to, and then we're going to talk a lot about this, the kanaf, the wing of the abomination of desolation right here. Okay? The wording is not the same as the Lord used, because he's quoting the LXX anyhow, and a bunch of other things are different. But the one thing that is the same is that the implication is this stuff here, this is the daily lamb sacrifice that the priests were offering, and this is what the people brought, the food offerings. They call it mincha today instead of minacha. It should have been going to the temple, which is talked about right here, where it's ceasing. Okay, this is middle of the week. It stops. And then this is supposed to be like a colon. Well, what is it that stopped? What stopped was the daily lamb sacrifices and the food offerings. But the way the text is worded, because the Bible is frequently worded like this, the words that come after really apply to the text before, and they also apply to the text after. So the sacrifices that were supposed to go to the temple went instead to the abomination of desolation going forward here. Okay? And even so, I mean, that makes it 14 syllables. Notice how I keep counting all the syllables, so almost no elision. But here, you know, if I say yishbit, which is really the way I think it should be sounded, or yashbit, all right? It's not biyit, it's not yashbiyit, it's yashbit. So then I can only get 12 syllables out of here. So this is 54, not 56. I can't turn it into 56 without, you know, adulterating the text or making weird assumptions, which is exactly the opposite of what you're supposed to do. So why 54? If you've seen my Psalm 90 videos and read some of the web pages that I've done on how God orchestrates time, I spent a lot of time explaining that Abraham matured in the year 2046 from Adam's fall, okay, and that's 54 years before the 2100 for the Goyim was supposed to complete. So there's a 54-year credit, because God keeps books like this, that's owed by the end of time. In other words, the second 2100 that belongs to the Jews basically started 54 years early. So by the tribulation is supposed to like even up the books, and even though the tribulation plus you know, Jubilee, as it were, harvesting the Gentiles of 50 years, that totals 57, but it makes up the 54 short. That extra 3.5 year piece is owed for other reasons. I haven't quite figured out which other reasons. There are several different 3.5 year pieces in Scripture, and I'm not sure which one is taking precedence here. I've been trying to figure that out for about 7 years now. So it ends up playing the last 57 years of history as illustrated by Jubilee plus Tribulation, but it's making up for 53.5 years literally that's owed because Abraham matured too early. 40 of those years got spent on the temple standing after church started, and the other 14 years, really 13 and a half, got spent on the temple being built. Okay? So the credit got used up, okay, but on a different set of books going back before Israel, this piece is still due. And of course, we already showed from the 49 sabbatical years missed, there were 7 extra sabbatical years due on them, which created the 56. Again, there are different ways of accounting for the 57. All right, 56, 57, they're the same thing. They reference different accounting points. So if God makes this 54, he's stressing the fact that the credit owed from Abraham is paid up. All right? Now, maybe, and I have to work this out, there might be something else here. All right? This is still a draft. I'm finally paying attention to this in much more detail. But that's what I got so far. If you got other ideas, I want to hear them. Okay? Whether they agree with me or not, I don't care. I never care about that. What I care about is substance. Okay? So any ideas you got, I want to hear them. Now, I'm going to go into some of the other things about this because there's a lot of confusion in the translations about this verse that I think we might be able to resolve. Let me show what I'm talking about here. You see, the NAU says on the wing of abominations, which is actually more accurate. Okay? But the NIV says on the wing of the temple. All right? You see that? This whole business about wing, which is this word here, knaf. Right there. It's a question, well, is it a wing of it? Is a wing of a place like we call it in English? And the answer is no. Okay? And then KJV, which isn't bad, says overspreading of abominations. The trouble with all these English translations, like this is vague. What does it mean, overspreading of abominations? What does that mean? It's all fuzzball language. Okay? And I submit to you that the Hebrew and the Greek are not fuzzball language. But there's a big difference. As you can see, there are two texts here in the Greek. Here's one version, and then this bottom one here is Theodotion's. Okay? And both of them are different from what Christ uses in Matthew 24. That's where we get into our little, you know, what do you want to call it, mystery quest. So I want to spend a little time on that now. All right, first of all, the word kanaf, maybe I better show it to you from the actual text here. Kanaf, 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 there you are. Kanaf, let's see if I can bring this up a little better. All right. You're not supposed to see that yet. Those are my other windows. Okay. Let's pull up the word kanaf in Hebrew so you can see it. All right. It's talking about a bird. The thing that's really important to notice about this is there's no verbal, they don't know of any verb that this noun either created that's cognate to it, or vice versa, that usually the verbs come from the nouns. They don't know of any. Okay, so it comes to be a very metaphorical term. It does mean wing of a bird literally. Okay, it can mean the wing or the edge of a border or corner of a shirt. And this is where some people are thinking, well, it's the wing of the temple. They're also getting that idea from the Greek text, because this word here, hieron, means a sacred place. And they're saying that the betaluma, the abomination, the idol, the abominating idol, upon the holy place. Hieron means a holy something. And when it says epito, this is actually an adjective, but adjectives in both Hebrew and Greek can be used as substantive, meaning nouns. And it's being used as a noun here because it's got a definite article in front of it right there. Okay, so they're thinking that it means on the wing of the temple. But the text isn't saying anything about wings here. Nothing. I better be quiet. The text isn't saying anything about wings here. There's nothing here about wings. Okay? Nothing. Alright? And that's the Theodotion version. And then here, okay, you got the same language, epiton, hieron. But there's nothing about wings here. This is the sacrifices and the food offerings. And then the next thing it says is even upon the holy place, the abominating idol, okay, is set up. Well, it doesn't actually even say set up. It just says it is. Okay? Now, the thing that really tipped me off to this thing here is this is idomenosom. Ide menosis. Okay, you can see that in the lower window. This is in the plural. See, it says here, feminine plural. That's not what the Lord used in Matthew 24. In Matthew 24, he uses genitive plural, genitive singular rather. See, he's saying betaluma also, right here. He's saying betaluma also. But he's using the genitive singular. So it's that one statue. And you see it capitalized there in the NAU, abomination, desolation, which is okay. Alright? It's in the singular. And I'm like, okay, well then he's not quoting from Daniel 9:27. He's not quoting from the LXX anyway. He's either quoting from the Hebrew or he's quoting from another verse. And here's the other verse he's quoting from. Oh, my mouse is slowing down. Okay. See? Same wording as in Matthew 24 above. Having trouble with the mouse. Betaluma erimuseus. Seus. You see? It's the same wording as up here. So he's quoting from Daniel 11:31. He's not quoting from 9:27. I mean, he's quoting the LXX in a different place. Same idea, same event, but he's quoting it from here. Okay, So that gives you a whole different thing, because he's saying it's set up. Okay, hold on. When you see it standing, you get through Daniel the prophet, okay, and then it says standing, but this isn't. This is for isthmy, estos. You can see isthmy in the middle of the screen, right here. That's isthmy. Okay, when you see it standing. In other words, an image is raised up. Okay? It has to be raised to be standing. You got that, I hope. So when you see this kanaf in Daniel 9:13, 9:27 rather, when you see this kanaf, it's not talking about on the wing of the temple. It means it's standing. It means it's flown in. Okay? And so what they're doing is they're giving their food, their sacrifices and food offerings, al, to. It's play on ale. God. Okay? Sound play. It's spelled differently. Ale with, to God, is spelled with an aleph, not an ayin. So they're giving their food sacrifice, their animal sacrifices and food sacrifices to a thing that's flown in, okay, or under the protection guidance of the abomination of desolations. And this is plural here, not singular. When Christ used it in Matthew 24, it's singular. When it's used in Daniel 11:31, it's singular. Here it's plural. In other words, the people who are making these sacrifices are desolating themselves. Okay, prostrating themselves, prostituting themselves. Okay, they're shaming themselves by doing this. They're making their sacrifices to this abomination. So this is detestable things, plural. Okay, under the protection of detestable things, shameful things. See the dual entendre? The thing itself is shameful. The activity itself is shameful. It's sponsored by, Antichrist people. But it's also made with the people who are making these sacrifices here, the animal sacrifices, the zebah, and the food offerings. I can't get the mouse to go in. Okay. They themselves are being shamed by doing it. Okay? And then, of course, the rest of the verse says, until the end, until the completion, it is decreed. Okay? And then you got to be poured out. Until the time, the end, when the decree, it's going to be poured out in order to desolate the desolator. In other words, the Antichrist. Now, in Daniel 11, you find out there are two Antichrists. The first one is going to end up what we call the King of the West. Daniel continues to identify what becomes the King of the West with what used to be relative to Israel, the King of the North. All right, it shifts because the power shifts over all this time that Daniel's given the prophecy. It shifts west and west and west. And, of course, that ends up being Rome. But the other Antichrist, as the Daniel 11 text tells you, is in Israel at that time. Okay? So there is going to be somebody who puts himself up as Messiah or puts himself up as the prophet of Messiah, more likely. And that's Revelation 13. As a result of which the King of the West, who is the same as the king who took down the temple, which means Rome, which doesn't necessarily mean anything to do with the Catholic Church. It means that's where the political power center is. It's a political entity that's being explained in Revelation 17, a political entity that uses religion. Okay? And it could be something we've never even heard of yet. That power is going to, whoever that is going to say he's the Christ returned, and going to set up a talking statue, that's Revelation 13, sponsored by the Antichrist, who's the head of Israel at that time. Now, obviously, that kind of event has never happened in history, so preterism is toast. All right? But even aside from that, the point is that this whole business about what is kanaf, this thing here, it doesn't mean the wing of a temple. It means a raising. And that is what you see also in the Greek text. Where is it? This word here. Iro means to raise up. Okay? See? Raise, elevate, lift up, raise. Okay? But in Hebrew, they don't have, that word is not being used. Instead, the word is just used as kanaf. Because that always denotes, a political thing. Political protection. God protecting you. And anyone's talking about God. But wing always has to do with power and, power on earth. Because God exhibits power on earth. That's why it's used of God. But it's talking about some kind of, wings over like a mother hen protecting her chicks. Okay? So that's a noun there. It's translated with a verb right here in this version, which is probably mixed. It's not probably the original LXX. But neither is this, because it's got this word mu in here, and that doesn't even belong. Okay, it's not even good grammar. It's not even in the right place. You wouldn't put it there. But it's got the same word. So some words that are, this is containing something of what it originally said, but we got the Hebrew, so we don't really worry about it too much. But there's nothing in here about wings. Okay? It's instead substituting a verb to raise up. And that's, of course, what the wing text means. That's what this means. Something that's flown in, raised up, raised over. Okay? So I just wanted to dispel that thing about the wing of the temple business, because that's been an annoyance for a long time. And so it looks like we're going to have to stop here because my mouse and everybody's going nuts. But at least, you hopefully got out of it the fact that this is a 54. And I'm going to have to sort of retool and rethink this. But it's a 54, not a 56. And that would that would be stressing the fact that all the time to the Gentiles is made up by the end of the tribulation, which therefore means that the millennium can start. It's stressing the same thing, but from a different angle. So that's it for now. Okay, now we're back on Daniel 9:27 again. And you'll see in the lower middle that I have blue lighted this verb here from Shabbat. That's where we get, Sabbath. Yashbit. Okay? And when I pronounce it that way, you'll notice up here, this is the standard transliteration pronunciation that you get in seminary. And that's what the students all have to learn. And where is it up here? See? They don't, the transliteration is terrible, okay? You're supposed to know from this little short sound above the S that it's a sh sound. It's really dumb. They should just put in an SH, but they don't. Okay, Yashbit is how they tell you to pronounce it. Yashbit. Okay. My guess is that it's not really pronounced that way. But I'm following their convention. So when you follow their convention, you're going to get 12 syllables. Oh, bloody. You're going to get, I'm not going to be able to stop that, so let me just cut the window. Okay. When you follow their convention, you're going to get Yashbit. I think it should be Yashbit, not Yashabit. Okay? But this is what they tell you in seminary, and, you're supposed to go with. These are, the scholars. They can't ever make a mistake, of course. I mean, their jobs are really hard, and I'd make more mistakes than they did if I was in the same place. But the point is that this pronunciation is in doubt, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, the sh sound already has a vowel sound at the end, so that it isn't necessarily ya, sh, beat. All right, especially because of what it comes from. See, Shabbat. It's a two-syllable word. I mean, Sabbath, the Jews would all be used to saying Shabbat, Shabbat, Shabbat. So they would be used to saying Yashbit rather than Yashabit. Okay? But that's two ways you can go on that. And I'm setting up something. Because what I told you in the last increment was that this sum here is, I can't get it to light up all at the same time there without going crazy. Okay, that's a total of 54 syllables. Okay, because this is only 12 now. One of the reasons it's only 12 now is because I wanted this to say Yashbit, because this yod sometimes extends the sound, and it is technically speaking a consonant, but you don't find that supported here. Okay, they do sometimes show the yod separately, and they would have a B-I-Y-I-T, but it's not in here. Okay, so I took it out. So taking it out, you got 12 syllables here. All right. Now again, I broke this in what seems to be the wrong place with seva here, because after Yashbit, the seva is what ceased. Okay? Again, it's du l'entendre uminacha, which is, they're pronouncing uminacha. I think that's wrong too. Uminacha is how they pronounce this word right here. Alright? And really, these two words do go together syntactically. But you see, this little baby here is acting like a colon or a semicolon. Alright? These are the things that were due and were offered at the temple. But they are instead going to the abomination of desolation here. Alright? That's the point of this passage. So, we got a subtraction of a syllable potential here versus what you see on screen. We got another subtraction of a syllable here instead of minaka. But then you've also got the fact that this H, okay, zera, it already has your mouth open. U, usually you're going to swallow the U. So it'd be zeval mincha, zeval mincha, zeval mincha. Okay, because people said these words a lot. These were very common words. All right, and I'm trying to set up where you could delete syllables, because there could be a lot of elision here, and I'm going to explain why in a minute. So this could be yishbat, yishbit, rather than yishebit. This could be mincha rather than uminacha. All right, and that's highlighted in blue in almost the center of the screen. Alright, and then here we got wal instead of wa'al. In other words, the shua here, which is probably not meant to be silent, could be silent. Could be one syllable, wa'al, or wal instead of wa'al. Wal, like that. Okay, and there's kanaf, the wing, you can't do anything with that. That can only be two syllables. And then this is shikotzim. There's nothing else you can do with that. Shikotzim. Can't shorten it, can't lengthen it, nothing. Okay? Ma, you might be able to lengthen that, but not likely, not with the sh next. Ma, sho, mem. Really, that's pretty much how you have to pronounce it. These are very established words, okay? So when they're established words, they tend to be pronounced the same way. You don't slur them or anything like that. Now, in the old days, they used to say shema, shema, and today they say shma. All right, the typical Jewish way of saying is shma instead of shema. All right. What I'm trying to get at here is that this is a picture of the future, which, technically speaking, would apply potentially in our day. And so when you're looking in the future, the change in language, there's going to be a lot of concatenation and elision and slurring. So I want to argue, and just for the sake of doing this, I want to show you why it might be useful. Yish beat. Okay? 2 syllables instead of 3. Mincha instead of uminacha. So that's 2 more syllables deleted. That's a total of 3 deleted so far. And then wa'al instead of wa'al. That means a total of 4 syllables could be deleted from this phrase. If there were 4 syllables deleted from this phrase, this total here, which I can't get to show, but it's black anyway, what do you care? The total becomes, instead of 54, it becomes 50. 50, does that ring a bell? Last 50 years of history, harvesting the Gentiles. I mean, the way it was portrayed in the Mosaic Law was that the 50 years would play first, and then the last 7, which is what we're looking at here. But by another way of speaking, also in the Mosaic Law, is the Jubilee represented the last 50 years of history. Okay, the last 50 years of history, because the 50th year of Jubilee was always depicting the year that Messiah comes to redeem Israel. All right, well, that's what happens at the end of the tribulation. So there's a sort of dual entendre, I'm arguing. I'm not 100% sure that it's intended in the text, but it certainly can be argued. All right, there's definitely 54 syllables here going by the standard, seminary pronunciation of Hebrew, which is right here in blue. That's what you get, is 54 syllables using it. And that's what the scholars, teach and use and blah, blah, blah. Okay. But if you elide a syllable here, 2 syllables here, and a syllable here, you get 50. That's pretty pregnant, don't you think? Especially because in later speech, that's what happens. Yishbit could easily become yishbit. It's easier to say, even. And uminacha, mincha, mincha. Mincha is how it's spelled in modern Judaism, even. They don't take into account the n. See, you got a shua there. You got a shua there below the n. They don't give it an extra e. They don't even give it an apostrophe. All right. In typical Jewish thought, when they transliterate this, they just transliterate it minha, and so does our boy. This is 12th dictionary. See, they just say minha. All right, and if you want, we can. Oh boy, am I going to have a problem with my computer? I'm having a problem with the computer not. There we go. Let's see if I can change the lexicon. Let's go to BDB. Okay, it's Brown Driver Briggs. Okay, and they don't, they don't typically spell it out. But mincha, of course, you don't see the n there. All right, they don't like to spell it out. Okay, so we'll switch to another one. Let's see. How about halot? You have to pay for these in Bible Works, and it's worth it. There, see, they don't like to spell it out too much either, but it's coming from manna. Okay, mana'ah. So mincha, see. Okay, you could go either way, I guess, from the etymology. Okay, so I'm arguing that it's at least potentially true that God knew how we would slur words. Okay, and so this thing here, adding up on conventional seminary pronunciation, is 54 syllables, but given modern practice, it could easily equal 50. And I just thought that was cute to say. Okay, now is there anything more to say on Daniel 9:27? It's already taken me 11 minutes to get this far. Well, only the fact that I wanted to compare something. See this? This is the Poel masculine, okay, of Shamim, to be desolated. Okay, again, this is on the wing. It's not talking about the wing of the temple. It's talking about something being raised up. There's no verb for that. Flying something in when it's talking about the wing of a bird, they don't have a comparative now, a verb for it. There is a verb to fly, but that one's not being used here because it's stressing the fact that it's an idol. Okay? This is plural. See? Detestable things. Okay? This is wing singular. Detestable things. The implication that is that it's flown in. Okay? And that makes sense because this is going to happen on day 1267. On day 1267, Revelation 11, just after the two witnesses are killed. They rise on the third and a half day, and so the government has to do something to, distract everybody's attention from that miraculous thing that everybody sees on TV. And so they fly in, see, on the wing. They fly in a talking statue, okay, into the Holy of Holies, okay. That's Revelation 11 tie-in, and that begins on day 1267. And the way you know that is you compare Daniel 12, the 1290 and the 1335 days are supposed to both be measured from the end of the tribulation, and that's where you get your exit window, and that's how you learn what day it is that this occurs, because the two witnesses are there during the first 42 months. It's 1260 days. Okay, and it's a solar 7 years in Daniel 12. That's how you know it's solar, because when you add up the days, 1260 and Revelation 11, plus those two back-ended exit windows comparison between 1290 and 1335, that's how you know. And so you know that this thing's coming in, like the Lord says in Matthew 24, at the midpoint, just like Daniel 9:27 is telling you. I mean, 1267 days. This is when this thing's coming in. You got the witnesses dying in Revelation 11. Then the third and a half day that they are seen live on TV going up to heaven, resurrected. Okay, not resurrected but resuscitated. And then they had their own little ascension, and that's pretty unnerving for the government, to have to witness. And so they got to do something. But there's an earthquake that happens. That's in Revelation 11 also. At the same time, it takes at least a few days to clean up. Okay. So hopefully you can hear me over the air conditioning. It's too hot right now. So that's when the sacrifices begin to go to. And this desolation here is masculine singular, referring to the desolator who caused this thing to be set up. See, this is plural, and it's basically desolating a whole offer to it. And then these offerings are going to, until the end, are decreed. And then this is really cool. They drip, they flood. See, look at that, poured out on, like a drink offering. See, minha, where is it? That is often used for a drink offering. Okay, a drink offering, food offering that people brought. And of course the priest ate it. Alright? So he's tying that, and you'll notice that that's singular, to this, which is a noun. Alright? And that's tying to kala. Alright, you see, the end, it's feminine, so is this. It's kind of, how do you want to call it? Putting down. Yeah, you thought you were king of the universe and all this other good stuff, taking my place. Yeah, well, little drop will do you. I'll just drain you out, drop you out, flood you out. See? Okay, and upon the one causing the desolation, which means the two antichrists and all their armies and all that stuff. You can read about that in Revelation 19. Okay, so that's about it for Daniel 9:27. So bottom line is, we're looking at here, I'm treating it according to the scholastic pronunciation stuff here. Here's a scholastic pronunciation you taught in seminary. I'm following that, and I'm getting 54 syllables as a result. Okay? But you could truncate it to 50 if you treat this as yashbit, this is mincha, and this is wow. Or you don't even pronounce the wow here. You just leave it out and just say al. And that would be 50, and that would conform to Jubilee, and the last year of Jubilee is supposed to be the year of the millennium. So that's it. Let me know your thoughts. Ta-ta. Okay, it really pays to listen to God instead of your own opinion. Yes, I am recording. Let's come back. This is the last time I'm going to have to parse this. Everything I told you was okay before, except I kept messing the meter. And what I've been trying to argue for a very long time now is that it's really important to know the meter also because it's self-auditing. Everything about God's timeline is self-auditing. So if you misanalyze a date that you're coming up with in the Bible, it won't balance if you have crafted a timeline from Adam through Christ. That was finally how I got this to balance, the timeline. The same thing is true with the meter. Okay, and I learned that when I was, stumbled onto the fact that Isaiah was perfectly metered. That's what kind of led me into all this. Which was about 3 years ago now. And I kept doing Isaiah, and that's all recorded in the Isaiah 53 meter hypothesis videos, how I had a certain idea and it was wrong because it didn't balance, and then I came up with another, and the fourth time I got it right. Okay, well, that's kind of what's happening here, only fortunately it's in a shorter passage. We've only got 24, 25, 26, and 27. Okay, so you've heard me for over an hour now, and what I said was okay except for part of the meter is wrong. So now I'm going to correct the part I got wrong. This yellow part here is what I got wrong in Daniel 9:25. And then this yellow part is what I got wrong in what I had said for the last hour in Daniel 9:26. The rest of the ideas and everything are still true. Okay, and the reason I got it wrong is because I elided the wa here, and I shouldn't do that because it's beginning a new clause. See, when you want, the Hebrew uses the wa, and they call it vav today. They use it in a lot of different ways, and one of the ways they use it is like a bullet point when they're getting ready to start a new bullet. Okay, you see, like I'm using bullet points here. There's a bullet point right here. All right. They use the wa that way, and when they do, you have to vocalize it. All right, you can't elide it. And I was eliding it here also. Well, that's wrong. Okay? So now that those two errors are corrected. Now I want to tell you sort of a little story about this whole thing with Daniel because it's kind of funny. And it kind of illustrates the process because, at this point, I'm the only one who understands this meter, and I'm trying to document it as best I can in case I die tomorrow, okay? So somebody else can pick up the baton and go on with this because I know this is valid. I'm not saying everything I'm telling you is valid, but the root idea is valid. It's just a question of, doing the legwork, and there's a lot of grunt work to do, so I consider myself kind of like a secretary, waitress, or something doing grunt work. Now, when you're a grunt or when you're a CEO, doesn't matter what you are, you better doggone be well listening to God, okay, instead of to your own opinions or feelings, okay? And when I first got into this Daniel thing, it was, I want to say, about a year ago. I finally sat down. I had heard it partly before, but not enough. I finally sat down and listened to my pastor's exegesis of Daniel, the whole book. He went through the whole book. And in Daniel 9 in particular, I'm confessing this, okay? I was bored, utterly bored by Daniel 9. I'm generally bored by prophecy anyway. I shouldn't be, but I am. Okay? Which is one reason I spend so much more time on it, to to dispel the boredom or just live with it. And that prayer just bores me to tears. It is so much like legal documents I have to work on. I just go, I don't want to listen to it. And the whole time I'm studying that chapter while my pastor's exegeting it, and it took, I want to say 2, 3, 4 months. It's always, you got to pay attention to this. It's real important. You got to pay attention to this. And I'm like, no, God, I don't want to pay attention. It's like, okay. And, so then I spent a week and a half just parsing it out in English. That was my big mistake. I didn't want to pay attention to the Hebrew. Because I wanted to do something else. The language bored me, blah, blah, okay? And it was like, it's important. And I kept on this, you got to pay attention. I'd fall asleep on the floor, and I didn't get what I'm telling you now. I didn't know this meter then. Because I wasn't looking at the Hebrew. I was looking at the English, just trying to figure out, why is he saying the same thing over and over and over, okay? I wasn't listening to what he was telling me, how important it was. Now, last Christmas, I got into an argument with 1689 Baptist on YouTube over the meaning of Ephesians 1, 3-14. And in order to try to prove to him he was wrong about what he was saying, the Calvinist doctrine of election, I went back to the passage, and as soon as I look at it in Greek, it's like, it's metered, you got to meter it out. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. See, I argue with God all the time. I don't want to do that. Okay, well, I did it real quickly, and then, of course, I was completely shocked to find out it was 434 syllables. At first, I reported the meter wrong to 1689. I thought it was 437. And, all that's recorded in the comments and stuff like that with him. But it was like, it's metered. You have to pay attention to it. Okay, and then here's where we get back to Daniel. I'm like, okay, fine, it's 434, but I don't understand why Paul is parsing, everything I've told you about Paul I know now, but I didn't know it in the beginning. And you'll see that in the 10 GGS, my first video on Ephesians 1, 3-14. I just parsed it quickly, and it's not right. The total is right, that was all. And so I'm standing, here's the story. I'm standing at my kitchen sink. I like to say grace before meals, okay? And I happen to say it just to the right of the kitchen sink. And I'm standing there getting ready to say grace so I can go eat. And it's like, Daniel 9 is metered. I'm like, okay, I'll go look. Okay, I've had it. I'll go look. And of course, that's how you're getting what you're seeing now. I mean, I've started the Daniel videos. I haven't finished them all. And now we're looking at this. And when I looked first at the Daniel prayer meter and found out it was metered, I was falling flat on my face all the time. I was completely shocked. And I then looked at 24 and 25. And yeah, it was really obviously metered. I mean, look at this pattern here. It's really sing-songy and very obviously metered, okay? But when I looked at Daniel 9, 26 and 27, I'm like, nah, they're not metered. Yeah, that's because I didn't want to parse it, okay? And the whole time I'm telling people on my videos that they're not metered, I'm getting this bing, bing, bing in my head going, they're metered. Okay, they're metered. It's metered. Okay. And so only this, last week did I bother to parse it. See, so I got egg on my face. So now you know. See, this is the process that really is going on behind the scenes. You might think that, brain out is this or that or the other thing. No, brain out just argues with God, and he always wins the debate. I don't particularly like doing this. I always like the results because they always end up being shocking and proving how right God is. Okay, but going through this process is an annoyance for me. Okay? And now you know, God is right, I am wrong, I did it wrong again, and here's the mistake I made. I didn't vocalize the wa here, so when you vocalize it, it's 10 syllables. Okay, and you've already heard me talk about that paragraph, or that section, so I'm not going to do it again. And the same thing is true here. This wa is vocalized because it begins a new, clause. It's a new bullet point. You have to vocalize the bullet points so that the people know that's what that is. I mean, you can tell from the syntax anyway, but I'm just saying, this is vocalized. All right, now, here's what happens. Dang! And he told me this, too, and I didn't listen to him. The whole time I'm talking to you for the last hour and a half now, and I'm saying, well, this is 56 syllables. I'm getting this little silent thing going on in my head. No, it's not. It's 57. And I'm like, no, I don't want it to be 57. That's not divisible by 7. You see? See, that's me arguing with God and losing the debate. This is 57 syllables. And the reason why, again, is that you have to vocalize the wa when it begins a new bullet point. See, you can elide it. In fact, they do elide it here. Okay? You got shishim shinaim. The wa gets swallowed here. Okay? Shabua, Shiva rather. Shiva Shibaim. Shibuim. It's going to get swallowed. The wa gets swallowed here. It's there for writing, but you wouldn't need the wa vocalized in numbers, because if the number's going on after Shiva, okay, then you're not going to need a vocalized wa here. So you can leave it out. That's why this equals 21 instead of 23. But this is a new bullet point, honey. I got to vocalize it. And he's saying, oh, it's 57. I don't want to hear that. Yeah, I'm wrong, he's right. So he wins the debate. Here's the wa vocalized. Same thing here. This is 57. The whole time I'm telling you it's 56, I'm thinking it's really 57. But I can't find 57. How am I going to find 57? Yeah, well, why don't you pay attention to the rule? Bullet point, new clause, wa, okay? Kitso. Well, kitso. I mean, that's a whole new thing there. In the end, and a flood. And because it's dramatic, there are no verbs. It's ellipsis of a verb. The Hebrew and Greek have the same kind of dramatic style. So, this is 57 syllables. See? God wins, I lose. 57 syllables. God wins, I lose. 57 syllables. Now, why is that important? Here's why, honey. What is this about, this whole paragraph? It's about the rebuilt temple going down. After what? After Messiah gets cut off. Now, if you go look in your history books, you'll find out that Titus began his assault on the Second Temple on Passover, first day, which is 14 Nisan, after sundown. Okay, he didn't begin it after sundown, as far as I know. Maybe he did. But he began it on Passover, solar day. And he ended it, according to the Jews, not according to Brainout, on 9th Ave, which according to the history books was 29 August 70 AD, and I'm thinking specifically of a particular summary of it, which is 1995 Military History Magazine in December 1995 issue. They had a big thing on Titus' assault on Jerusalem. But you can find it in other places. You can just pretty much look it up anywhere. But that particular issue went through the day by day, and they relied a lot on Josephus and other sources. That's 114 days. That's 257s, hello. 257s back to back. Well, what is God depicting here? Okay. Here's the decree, 57. Not 56, and 57, back to back 57s. Could you ask for more accuracy than that about what this is about? And again, you can kind of empathize with the preterists who think that's the whole story. But it's not. First of all, you got Daniel 9:27 still left out of the picture. So it ain't yet happened. And of course, we got in the middle of the week, the sacrifices are stopped, and this thing is put up on top in the middle of the week. That didn't happen in 70 or 73 AD, whichever calendar you prefer. It didn't happen. There was no fake talking statue put up in the Holy of Holies when the temple was taken down by Titus. That didn't happen. Alright? So, Daniel 9:27 hadn't happened in history yet. So, the preterists are wrong. Okay, that's one reason why we know. The other reason, is look at all these 14s. 14, 14, 14. Ad Mashiach. Yeah, because he's the one that's promised the 14. Because why? Because Israel has 7 more sabbatical years to play on the 49 she missed, and they can't play in history. She has got to get that temple up in year 49, which of course the foundation was. By the end of the 49th year, the foundation was up. And then nothing happened for the next 16 years. And then in the last 7, it gets built. 6. Alright? 14. Oh, 14. Look at how 14 is stressed. Okay, not quite as stressed as I thought because this is still 12. I can't make it be another number. But we got 14s all over the place. Look at this. 14, 14, 14. These are where the clauses break. You try to break them somewhere else and it doesn't quite work. Okay, the syntax. See, you break a clause by where it would naturally break in syntax. You don't break it artificially like they do in Greek poetry. Alright? So here you go. 14, 14, 14, 14. Yeah, because this whole thing, until this completes, alright, he's God-man, so that's one reason for the 14. And it has to start when? After the 62nd week begins, then he's cut off. Okay, well, the 62nd week began, but it didn't end. And that is Paul's point of departure that Paul is going to use, okay? That Paul is going to use, he's going to use the 14s as you're hopefully seeing in my 11 GGS videos now. Okay? There's one more thing we do in order to make sure the parsing is okay. The whole passage has to be divisible by 7 or you misparsed it. That's true in every single Bible passage that I've covered about the meter. The whole passage, the whole of Isaiah 53, the whole of Daniel 9's prayer, the whole of this passage here in Daniel 9:24 through 27, which is God's answer. The whole of Psalm 90 has to be divisible by 7 or there's a misparsing somewhere. Okay? And that's how I caught the error. Again, it's self-auditing. And there's always a grammar rule you can hang your hat on. When you make a mistake, you'll find some grammar rule saying, hi, you know what? This is a new bullet point. You should have vocalized the verb. Oh, yeah, I should have remembered that. Yeah, and here's another test. It's got to be meaningful. These numbers aren't there to wow you. They're doctrinally meaningful. Okay, Psalm 90 is 350 syllables for a reason. That's 5 70s. The Jews misaccounted as 750s. That's why they think there's going to be 7,000 years in history. Okay, so when it's divisible by 7, what is the number? It's going to have to be doctrinally meaningful. Well, hello, can it be more doctrinally meaningful than 33 sevens? The Lord was 33 when he actually died. 63, 57, 57, 54 is 231, baby. That's equal to 33 sevens. And guess what? Paul knows that. Because he uses 33 sevens for the Eudokian anaphora. That's how many syllables it runs. It's 3 appearances of Eudokian, except the last appearance he substitutes the word bolane because he's playing on bolete in Isaiah 53, 11, and 10 LXX. Okay, so he substitutes Eudokian for bolete, and so he uses the cognate noun bole in Ephesians. I want to say it's 1:12. Okay, it might be 1:12. Okay, that's where it ends. It starts in verse 6 and it ends in verse 12. It's three times. He uses Eudokian telematosatu. Okay, so it's 33 sevens is the length of that anaphora from its first appearance to its last syllable. Okay, 33 sevens. Christ was 33 when he died. Who could be more holy than Christ? So 33 sevens. You got that? That's 231 years. Now, if that were all, you could say, well, maybe it's a coincidence. Oh, but that's not all. Because you see, Paul's total meter and Daniel's benchmark in Daniel 9:13 is 434 syllables, which equals to 62 weeks. Okay, so when you subtract God's reply of 231 syllables, you get a benchmark that's extremely significant. 203, syllable 203 is at the end of Isaiah 53:4, and it stands for 586 BC, temple down. Well, what is this talking about? Temple down. With the same double sevens ending on the same day that the second temple goes down as the first temple went down on 9th Ave, which is in Jeremiah 52, I want to say 11 through 13. He says it's the 10th of the 5th month. Well, yeah, at sundown it would have become the 10th. The solar day would have been the 9th, and the Jews all say it's 9th Ave, Tish B'Av. They celebrate it today. Well, they cry about it today. Okay? And they cried about Tish B'Av. That was the only day that they were allowed into Elia Capitolina. Otherwise, they were barred from Jerusalem. That was the only day they were allowed in. Was on Tish B'Av. Okay, well, twice the temple goes down on the same day. Hello. And it's doubled sevens. Hello. Could it be more obvious that God means this? And oh, by the way, it also ties to the same syllable on the same subject about the first temple in Isaiah 53:4, because that represents 586 BC in Isaiah's chronology. Isaiah starts his chronology in Isaiah 53:1 for current. In 712 BC, and by the time he gets to syllable 203, it's 586 BC. When Nebuchadnezzar takes the temple down, that's in Second Chronicles, I want to say Second Chronicles 24, 28, somewhere in there, at the end. Okay, you can also find the parallel passage in Kings. Okay, where they melt everything down. There's no ark anymore, it got melted down. Okay? So, could this be God himself is tagging Isaiah 53:4, syllable 203, just like Daniel had done? And that's juridical marking. Hi, I'm talking about the same subject, only now it's going to apply the second temple on the same timeline as the first temple, only it's going to run double 57s, okay, and end on 9th Ave again, which any Jew will tell you today. I'm not 100% sure they're right about that, but this sure kind of buttresses their argument. 257s. It did begin on Passover. 9th Ave is the 114th day, counting the first day of Passover and counting 9th Ave. Do the math. Oh, you have to know that in Bible's calendar, not modern Judaism's, every month has 30 days, except Adar. And Adar runs either 35 or 36 days, depending on when the vernal equinox begins. So that's it, baby. I have corrected now the error, and you can see how and why. And notice that if you're going to go parse this yourself, there's always going to be some grammatical rule for whether you vocalized or not. And if you screw up the rule because, like me, you wanted it to equal 56 instead of 57, God's going to catch you, especially if you're using 1 John 1:9 a lot. And then you'll get caught, and that's good, because then you'll get corrected. And now you see the correction. Ta-ta!